What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the Mining Pod. For today's show, we have Erick Vera, Business Development Lead for Latin America at Luxor Technologies, to talk about Bitcoin mining in Latin America, zooming in specifically on the Bitcoin mining regions of Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina. Erick brings a wealth of knowledge about the area. He's been active in it for a few years now, doing everything from mining pool BD to ASIC brokerage to discovery and all of the good things that you need to do when doing business in the region. So he's got the lowdown on a lot of the operational considerations that miners go through when operating in these regions, the regulatory hurdles they have to clear, and a bunch of other stuff. We also cover a few of the smaller mining regions in the area. So Erick gives us his feeling for which ones will be up and coming over the next halving epoch and some opportunities that he has seen outside of the big three, Paraguay, Argentina, and Brazil. So with that, let's hop right into it. Hope you all enjoy the show.
Are you a retail or institutional investor interested in Bitcoin mining companies? The Miner Mag brings you free data and analysis from all major NASDAQ-listed Bitcoin mining operations to know who stands out. Check out visualized metrics and data-dependent stories at theminermag.com. Thanks for listening to The Mining Pod. Want more? Subscribe to our main feed on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever else you get your podcasts for another weekly show on Bitcoin stocks. And check out our newsletter at miningpod.blockspace.media today.
Mr. Vera, welcome to the Mining Pod. How are you doing, sir?
Excited, finally. It was a lot of time since I begged Will back in the day in Austin to be on the pod, and finally you have to make it real.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you on, man. We're trying to do more coverage of just Bitcoin mining around the world, and I couldn't think of anyone better than yourself to come on and talk about the Latin American context. You've been working on business development for Luxor in Latin America for a few years now and have built a lot of relationships there, have a lot of intel. So just to start off and to set some context for our listeners, which countries in Latin America are you seeing the most mining activity currently? I think most people know Paraguay, but what are some of the other countries in the mix?
For sure. Paraguay has been in the conversation since early 2021 after the China ban, when a lot of miners were looking for opportunities with affordable cost of power. And but a lot of people have out of their radars the countries like Argentina, Brazil, Ecuador, Peru, and even some more ones that people could believe that it's quite impossible to do it, given their size. But places like Costa Rica are very interesting. Of course, the Venezuela activity has been always in the conversation. However, it has stopped to be as prolific as it was back in that time frame.
And that's mostly because Venezuela is just too unstable. People basically get their mines seized by the government and officials and things like that. Is that generally the idea?
Yes. Oh my God. I think Venezuela was, and I do have beautiful friends from down there. I used to work there on my oil and gas days. So I have nothing but nice things to say about them. However, I think that they flew way too close to the sun, if that's the right word to say. Yeah. They created pretty good stuff, Colin. They had a regulator agency, not only for power, but also for importation. Every miner has to have a license. They even were able to pay electricity with Bitcoin through a system they implemented over there. However, a couple of politics here and there took the industry on a downtrend, followed by also a huge bear market that we started experiencing in somewhere around 2022, all over until this past maybe a year or so, right? So they did a lot of pretty good stuff. They were growing a lot, good infrastructure, good operators, hosting prices somewhere around 3 cents all in. But once again, right, all of that I mentioned before took the market down. And unfortunately, we are not seeing large private operations down there.
Interesting. So for the countries that you did list before Venezuela, can you give a rough estimate of how many megawatts are active in some of the bigger ones?
So we have an estimate of somewhere around 500 megawatts operating in Paraguay only, from large-scale operations like Penguin, Bitmain, and of course, public companies like Bitfarms, sorry. And I believe the second place would be for Argentina. This is a little bit more complicated to estimate, but we consider that there's around 200 megawatts. And Brazil is taking the third place, which I will touch that in a few minutes. But Brazil is going to take the third place, somewhere around 100 megawatts or so. This is current estimations. I am not considering the expansions that I will be more than happy to share based on what we have studied so far.
Is Luxor expecting a lot of expansion in this area over the next few years? I mean, I know with Paraguay specifically, Bitfarms and Hive have 100 megawatt plus expansion plans for the region. But similarly, yes, for Brazil and Argentina, do you expect similar levels of growth?
Yes, one of the things here, Colin, and of course, to give a broader perspective to your audience out there, Latin America is a huge region, right? I mean, it's composed by 33 countries, and in terms of population, if we add them all together, it would be the third largest country in the world, just behind India, and almost doubling the US. For power generation, there's around 500,000 megawatts of power generation, being Brazil and Mexico the ones that produces the most, and with main sources like hydro and fossil fuels, right? So there's also a huge variety of industrial tariffs, everywhere from 2 cents all the way to 20 cents per kilowatt hour. Of course, these are all information that you can find online, and that doesn't mean that if you go to a country that says that it has 20 cents per kilowatt hour, that's what you're going to get. If you do the hard work of going to the generator itself, and the jurisdictions are friendly to you, you can get very affordable and sizable amounts of power. So the opportunities that are going over there in terms of the near future are very interesting. So, for example, Paraguay has been, I don't want to say similar to Venezuela in that terms, but there has been a lot of changes. Yeah, everywhere from 2021, where you were able to find 3.6, 3.9 cents per kilowatt hour. Now that same contract is around 6 point something plus VAT.
Wow.
In less than 5 years. So that gives a lot of uncertainty in terms of expanding a business, right? So now what we have seen is that the major players, that the ones that have access to actually own and build a substation, are going the ones to be growing and thriving during these conditions. And yes, you mentioned it. Hive is one of them. Bitfarms is one of them. All of these are public information, and there are other ones out there that have too much skin in the game still. Whereas they are from other countries, or they are locals, and they are doing fantastic things in Paraguay, but they are still getting larger contracts and larger footprints. So we estimate that in the region, we are going to see somewhere around 800 megawatts of growth in the next 12 months.
Wow! So that's within 800 megawatts in Paraguay, or Latin America in total for 2025.
Latin America in total. Okay. But yes, Paraguay is going to be the largest chunk. There is going to be, based on what I mentioned before about the tariffs changes in Paraguay, there are going to be some, I don't want to say exodus, but let's call it migration to Brazil. This is one of the things that I love about this industry. So Brazil is huge, right? And they are by far the biggest economy in Latin America, biggest in population, biggest in everything. So with a lot of conditions in the macroeconomy situation that is going on right now, mainly for industrial players like Volkswagen, the automobile manufacturers, they are going to leave the country or leave their operations in Brazil anytime soon, leaving a huge amount of already built infrastructure of electricity that the power generators are willing to sell to private consumers. So there will be opportunities that range from 5 megawatts all the way to 100 of megawatts. So here, once again, it's where do you get the electricity, right? If you get it directly from the generator on site, you will save a lot of money in transmission lines, transmission fees, and all of that components of the electricity price way more expensive. So there's going to be an interesting amount of opportunities in Brazil. And I do believe that if things are playing right in terms of friendliness with the government, customs, power generators, etc., they're going to take the second place anytime soon.
Okay, so 2 questions for Brazil, and then I want to zoom in on Paraguay. Did I just understand you correctly that you said that some of these manufacturers might do JVs with miners to have actual mining rigs on site to soak up excess energy that they pay for? Or did I completely misunderstand?
Yeah, well, probably I did not explain myself properly. So companies like Volkswagen, which they have announced that they are going to wind down their operations in Brazil.
Oh, I see.
They are going to leave or stop their operations down there, leaving all of that electrical infrastructure available. Okay, so
prime opportunity for Bitcoin miners to come in.
Exactly.
Today's show is brought to you by Digital Shovel. Digital Shovel is a leading manufacturer of modular mining pods as well as PDUs and switchgears. Unlike many other competitors, their product is designed and manufactured in North America with a complete UL inspection on the entire unit, not just individual components. Additionally, Digital Shovel is one of the most vertically integrated manufacturers of over 75,000 square feet of sheet metal shop, SMT and wave solder PCB assembly, as well as final assembly all under one roof in Toronto, Canada. Their price point leads the industry when compared to products with rates as low as $69,000 per megawatt for a complete data center with smart PDUs and switchgears. To learn more, visit digitalshovel.com. So there's the abandoned industrial plant element to this that Bitcoin miners find attractive. Is there also something to be said about the fact that power in Brazil might be more attractive than other places in Latin America because of the Itaipu Dam? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but the dam that Paraguay and Brazil share power from, does that play any factor or create favorable economic conditions for some of the miners in the area?
Yes and no. First, the amount of energy that it's produced by the Itaipu Dam, which is 14 gigs, it's shared half and half, right? Half to Paraguay, half to Brazil. But these 7 Gs of Brazil is not even enough to power the city of Sao Paulo.
Right.
Okay. So I have over here some numbers that I can tell you about what is the amount of energy that Brazil produces only, and it's staggering. So let me find real quick over here.
And while you're finding that, just for more context for our listeners, Brazil's population is 216 million and Paraguay's is like 5 to 6 million.
Exactly.
And Paraguay's got 7 gigawatts of power from the Itaipu Dam for that 5.6 million people. And they also have a few other dams in the region too. So they've got more power than they can deal with. And that's why so many miners have started flocking there, basically.
Exactly. So just for context, Colin, the amount of energy produced by Brazil, based on official numbers, is somewhere around 200 gigawatts. So we're from that amount, half of that is hydro. So 100 gigawatts, it's not. So the Itaipu Dam is somewhere around less than 1%, 7%. No,
that's fascinating. And hydro is prime real estate in terms of energy for Bitcoin miners because it is typically uninterrupted. It's abundant. And historically, we, like in China before the mining ban, we saw miners converge on these hydro sites or power sources near it, right? Or, places near these power sources, because they're able to draw consistent energy, and they often produce an overabundance. Mm-hmm. Going back to Paraguay for a second, you mentioned the tariffs for energy. You mentioned the fact that electricity prices have gone up. In the news cycle over the last year or so, there's been headlines that have said that the officials are cracking down on illegal mining, right? Miners coming in and kind of what I call cowboy mining, plugging in without actually the proper, PPAs in place or without regulatory approval. And there's also been, a tax, I think, that they levied on Bitcoin mining specifically. All of that said, how has that changed the Bitcoin mining industry in the country? And do you think that it hampers growth in the long term? Do you think that it basically just drives out some of the smaller operators, but the bigger ones like Bitfarms, Hive, and the industrial scale ones will be able to flourish? How does the government's changing stances, or essentially new regulation and tariffs, how has that impacted mining in Paraguay?
That's a fantastic question, Colin, because this is a conversation that I have had with many miners in the region, that they have lobbied their way out to stop these ever-changing tariffs on the power cost. Because back in the day, once again, so if we go to the crude math, right, raw math, 7 gigs of this power that it belongs to Paraguay. That's by their agreement with they put that, right. However, the dam also, the agreement also implies that every excess power that Paraguay is not consuming is going to be sold to Brazil at cost. Mm-hmm. So probably you have it over there on your own numbers, but the last I know, Paraguay is not even consuming half of that 7 gigawatts. Therefore, the other 3 gigawatts that are available are just being thrown through the other side of the pond for Brazil. Now, somebody that comes and tells you that, hey, instead of paying you 2 cents per kilowatt hour, I will pay you 4, for example. And Paraguay is like, okay, fantastic, yes. There are, as you know, power deposits, this and that. So, you want this size of power contract, you got to build your own substation, or you got to build, or you got to have an exclusive line that they call that it's next to a substation. So all of these things play a huge role on the power cost. But to answer your question, the government in Paraguay are still seeing like, okay, yes, we are making money out of electricity, but what about other taxes, right? Like for employment, like for whatever else the tax machine works, right? So since they are not able to see that Bitcoin data centers or Bitcoin firms are hiring enough people, 3, maybe 4 guys per megawatt as workforce. And I think I am going a little bit high.
Maybe generous there.
Yeah. Yes. So labor cost down there is very cheap. Even though if they make money or higher money than a regular technician, it's still very cheap. So their OPEX over there balances with the higher power cost that you maybe have in places like Texas. However, they are getting damaged a lot by taxes on or increased amount of price for power, and also, which I haven't mentioned, on the duties for machines that are being imported, which that is one of the least appealing factors of going to Paraguay, because back in the day when an S19J Pro was $10,000, and you and me clearly remember that, customs were like, hey, it's still $10,000, so I'm going to charge you 18% of that, which is $1,800. That's okay. People were printing money. But right now, S19J Pro is less than $200. and these guys are still thinking that $10,000 is the fair market value. So,
That's
oh my God, it makes things very complicated, Colin, because getting your machines out of customs in a regular way, in a legal way, it's costly. It's not that fast. And for people that want to go big over there, they have to iron out these details with customs prior they ship their machines. Otherwise, things are going to change, and there's going to be a lot of money paying in unnecessary taxes over there.
So just to recap the first part there, I think this is an interesting point. The Paraguayan authorities, ANDI, right, the power authority there that operates their dams and other electrical infrastructure, basically have to weigh the cost of providing miners with electricity versus what they can sell it to Brazil. So they're going to want to make sure that the cost of the electricity is competitive. And they also want to make sure the government does that there's paying taxes on the Bitcoin that they produce and their businesses in the region. Yeah. The other part, I think the import tariff thing is super interesting and something that I think is underappreciated or not talked about. So it almost sounds like, whether maliciously or not, right? This could be just born of ignorance because they don't have the data, or it could be because they want to make more money from the tariffs. But the import agent can basically just say, this is what this import is worth because this guy paid that a year ago or something like that, right?
Exactly.
Does it really kind of just depend on who the guy is and what the day is, right? Do you see what I'm saying? It's like, it seems like there's not any set procedure for this.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you put it right. So back in the day, and I was prior of this, when I learned that the customs agency in Paraguay used hash rate index to see what was the market value of the machines. So they were like, oh, okay, so an S19J Pro according to hash rate index is $10,000. So show me the money, right? And even though you show them a invoice for $100 back in 2021, nobody would believe you. But right now you come with an S19J Pro probably because you have to send kilowatt hour power or something like that, which I don't know how you can get that, or at least over there. And customs are like, no, dude. A year ago, this was let's forget about the $10,000. A year ago, it was $5,000 or maybe $2,000.
So they just can't believe it. They don't believe that they depreciate this quickly. Is that kind of the idea? It's like they're like, you're fucking with me. There's no way that this thing lost 90% of its value over the last year.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So there are companies, very reputable companies that we work with, that they do all of their homework prior to import the machines. So they take all of the deposits they have made, all of the contracts they have signed. They gather information from different venues and price lists. They go to the custom agents and they say, like, look, I'm going to import, let's say, 1,000 M50S plus pluses or S21 Pros. This is what we pay. This is the fair market value, and we want you to provide us a quote. So let's say that the quote is for a machine that it's $2,000. The quote is $500 or $400. So with that quote previously requested to the custom agents, they are kind of responsible for comply with that. So they cannot come and say, like you mentioned, right? Like, oh, now there's a new dude, or there's somebody who wake up on the wrong feet. So they are like, okay, yes, it's a quote, it's valid, and we will fulfill it. So they pay, even some of them even pay in advance. But these are more sophisticated type of miners down there, which of course we love to work with. And Luxor has been able to create good relationship with these guys to make everybody who wants to go to Paraguay, small or large scale, able to do it in a, let's say, non-surprising arrival, where you have the machine, whatever the cost it is, and then they arrive, and then you get an invoice for an X amount of tariffs, and you're like, man, you quote me, let's say $300, and now it's like, what, 700? For one machine, maybe you can eat it up, but what about when it's 10 megawatts of S21 XPs?
Right.
So somebody is going to be really pissed that day.
Do you see this import problem in any other countries like Brazil or Argentina? Do they have similar import tariffs for these machines, and does it cause the same headache?
That's another fantastic question, because I never thought that as a petroleum engineer would ever be. I don't want to call myself an expert of international commerce, but oh my God, it has been quite an exposure to say the least. So let's start with the easy one, which is Argentina. So Argentina, for years and years, have been promoting an inside consumption, right? I mean, an inner consumption in the market. So everything that has to be consumed has to be local to promote and to move the local economy. But there are things that are not manufactured or can't be manufactured within Argentina. So they are subject to special tariff, especially right now with the let's say the parallel price of the dollar or the Argentina pesos, right? However you want to see it. But to answer this in a simple way, there are companies down there that are very professional, that they know how to deal with customs in a compliance way, that they can run a process to get this type of importing license, and then move miners on a way easier path. There are also cowboy ones that are not worth mentioning because that happens everywhere in the world. And numbers, when you do things right in Argentina, are not that crazy. However, if you want to import one machine, it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very difficult and costly. Now, when you're talking about large cargoes for thousand numbers of miners, even though they are used or new, things are a little bit easier. For Brazil has a huge, as well as Argentina, has a huge oil and gas industry. And oil and gas companies know how to import and export equipment or very specialized equipment into different jurisdictions, right? So there is a figure of importation that it's called temporary importation, which I think everywhere in the world happens the same. So, for example, you have a Formula One car, you put it into the Mexico Grand Prix, but this car is going to be just 1 week in the country, right? Then it's going to move from Mexico to Brazil, and to Brazil to Vegas, and so forth. So why do they have to pay these import taxes if the good is not going to stay in the country? So what they do is temporary importation, and temporary importation can be anywhere from 1 year all the way to 5 years. So when we hear like, oh, importation taxes for Brazil are 50%, yes. However, if you split that down into 5 years, then it's 10%. You will pay 10% every year. So there's another conundrum over here, Colin. If you don't do this right, the custom agents in Brazil are not stupid at all. And if you don't do it right, you can get massive fines. So once again, that's the value of working with a trusted partner who has done business within the country, that speaks the language. In Brazil, it's Portuguese, and since Brazil is huge, you have to know which port to do this importation from. So, and the reason I tell you this, and about the migration that I mentioned before about Paraguay miners, there's kind of reluctancy to receive Paraguayan miners, used miners, because Brazil don't want to be a graveyard mining place. So it is going to be quite difficult to move used miners from Paraguay to Brazil than to move new ones from Asia.
Interesting. Is that because the rigs from Paraguay were improperly treated, or is it just they don't want used machines and they want to make sure they can start fresh?
I think both. So In order for you to know where these machines come from and if they were imported properly and stuff, it is quite of a headache, because now Paraguayan miner has to have export license, right? Which most of them don't. And how does the Paraguayan government is going to know that these machines were imported properly, right? So they would be like assuming or inherited another problem, right? And for that's on the, let's say, pragmatic point of view. On the other point of view is they don't want to become a place where used or scrap miners are going to arrive. They're going to suck their affordable cost of energy and then just going to the trash, right? They want to differentiate from other regions by having serious players that bring top technology and that they are not using it just as a backyard for unused miners.
Got it. And so for the miners who are leaving Paraguay and going to Brazil, are they establishing their own farms there? Are they doing joint ventures with Brazilian miners? Are they just selling the equipment directly to the Brazilian miners? What are the business arrangements like?
Yeah, there has been a number of very reputable Brazilian miners that started in Brazil and then moved to other jurisdictions like the US. And they have a lot of experience in dealing with power generators in the region. So they have been doing these JVs with the power generators in order also to comply with the law, to be like a self-consumption type of entity, which I think it's the name of the game, Colin, because there are certain locks in certain jurisdictions, like Mexico, for example, where you cannot self-consume certain amount of power. And even though you can consume it, you have to have a certain permit. So if the generator is self-consuming it, but somebody else with the proper knowledge and technology comes into the equation, yes, JVs has to happen. So on the miner side, people with proper knowledge of cooling, containers, electrical infrastructure, and of course the operation of the miners come to the knowledge of the guy who has a hydropower plant that they are not willing to sell the power to the grid because they are not getting proper compensation, or they just get tired of doing it. This is an example of Brazil. This is an example of Costa Rica, and there are other examples. Or to do the both good. The good thing about both worlds, arbitraging energy, right? So whenever energy is cheap, I mine Bitcoin. Whenever energy is it's way more profitable, I turn off, right? So I have seen this in a couple of jurisdictions in Latin America, which they do fantastic with this business model.
In the competitive world of Bitcoin mining, one name stands out: CleanSpark, America's Bitcoin miner. At CleanSpark, efficiency isn't just a goal, it's our standard. Our sophisticated facilities are built and led by expert teams who care about Bitcoin and the communities we work in. Scale, we've mastered it. Our large-scale operations have set us apart in the industry as examples of community-oriented building. Our track record speaks for itself. We navigate the complexities of the new economy with precision and with skill, continuously achieving operational milestones. Curious about how we do it? We invite you to discover the story behind CleanSpark's success at cleanspark.com.
So in Brazil, it sounds like JVs with actual power producers are the dominant model and will be the dominant model. Is that versus Paraguay, where you're basically just establishing a PPA with Andy, and then you're buying power? The reason why is because Brazil has certain laws and regulations about self-consumption. So if you actually have a deal with the power producer, then you get larger blocks of power. So does that make deal making a little more difficult in Brazil versus Paraguay? Like, is that why we've seen slower growth in that region and why it's still maybe number 3 in Latin America in terms of megawatt footprint?
I think so, Colin, because to put an example of other jurisdiction and other power providers that we have seen in the region, most of the power generators, they do not own the infrastructure, and they do not have a saying of who to sell the power to if it's not the government, right? So most of these guys are backed by huge development banks, and they are the ones who take the call on who is going to be your customer. So they don't want to run to any reputational risk or any type of, let's say, link to dairy players or whatever you want to call it. They just rather do not sell that energy because
that's interesting,
and they can basically do whatever they want. But there are guys that they own the infrastructure. But some way they got banned or they got bypassed by their main buyer, the government, and they're like, now what do I do with this hydro plant over there, right? So some of them have this idea of, okay, let's put a technology layer, let's do it, let's self-consume it, but I mean, we can learn how to do that in YouTube, right? They go to YouTube, they see my guy Colin Harper turning on their S9 at home, but then when they have 1,000 S9s, they think, oh my God, this is not as easy. So that's when these guys punch themselves in the face, right? So I think, and all of these contests that I put is it's slower, yes, because there has to be certain amount of evangelization or digital evangelization, if you want to call it like that, where they partner with the right party, reputable one that they know how to do it, that has skin in the game, and from there they grow. And that's an example of so many places in Latin America that I can mention.
That's interesting. Speaking of other places in Latin America, you mentioned this repurposing of industrial sites in Brazil, like the Volkswagen plant that, they left, and now there are these massive plants with power assets that aren't being used, transformers, substations. Is that a trend around Latin America? Are there other countries that have similar abandoned industrial space that miners could use?
Yes. In Venezuela, when we were exploring the region over there, I went to this place that was in front of I think that was a beer factory, huge beer factory that they went down. I think it was a German beer factory. Apologies if I am saying that wrong, but I do remember it was a beer factory who was in front of this industrial park, abandoned. In Paraguay, there was this huge agriculture. I don't remember exactly what they were manufacturing, but they were manufacturing something for the agriculture industry in Paraguay. But they have this huge byproduct that was highly pollutive, and the government shut it down. But they have 100 and probably 200 megawatt substation. Nobody uses it. So if you are able to, in this case in Paraguay, right? If you are able to talk to Andy and tell him like, hey, I know that there is this substation over here. I know that there's this capacity factor that you are not using. Sell the energy to me. I will put myself in the substation already built that you probably haven't even paid yet, and there's this abandoned industrial park that I can use. Right? They don't even have to build a warehouse or anything. They just have to bring their own containers or the racks. So yes, I have seen this in many places that are totally legal, that they are harnessing these empty, unused, or abandoned spaces, and they are more than happy to do it. Of course, if you know how to play by the rules and how to do everything right, so it doesn't look like you're stealing energy. There's a huge amount of potential.
That's really interesting. It reminds me of a lot of Bitcoin mining in the Rust Belt in the US. The Rust Belt being Pennsylvania, Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, that area. And, there used to be a lot of car manufacturing plants. There used to be steel manufacturing and fabrication plants, all of these things which require gobs of electricity. And one of the first Bitcoin one of the first Bitcoin mines I ever visited was Songa Systems in Illinois, and it used to be a steel plant, right? It's on this massive campus that used to have steel manufacturing capabilities. And I think that's just such an interesting use case for repurposing old industrial sites, Bitcoin mining. And it makes sense that it would, persist in other places too, like Latin America. Shifting gears really quickly to Argentina, because we've talked about Brazil and Paraguay quite a bit. I want to zoom in on Argentina here really quickly before we hop off. And kind of a two-part question. We talked about the JVs in Brazil being the best way to go about getting power. We talked about in Paraguay tariffs increasing, but also the immense opportunities that still exist there. What are some of the operational considerations for miners in Argentina? Like, what does the process look like? What are some of the difficulties? What things about mining in the region are easy? And kind of like a follow-up to that question is like, why is it still kind of around 200 megawatts? Bitfarms has got, I believe, 58 megawatts. They're one of the largest operators in there. Why has there not been as much growth? And does that relate to some of those operational considerations? And then the second question is about Malay, but I'll let you tackle this one first.
Yeah, well, the largest opportunity down there, Colin, as we have studied, it's definitely off-grid operations. So Vaca Muerta in the prolific oil and gas region of Argentina is huge. And everybody who listens to your podcast knows that the difficulty of transporting this gas, more about extraction, actually taking the molecule to the market, it's very expensive. So a lot of the infrastructure projects were delayed or even stopped because lack of funding, because companies that were doing over there stopped receiving their the payments, etc. So now the solution is taking the market to the molecule, right? So there are amazing players down there like Crusoe partnering with Unblock, doing amazing things, doing their digital mitigation, thermal mitigation, which is it's a fantastic use case for that. And I think we are getting to a tipping point where we are going to see real growth over there. So everybody who does off-grid miners, shout out to my guy HT Tarantula. It's very difficult. It's more of a game of operating the generator rather than operating the machines, right? So these flexible load consumers like the miners, pair with proper firmware like LuxOS, it's going to change the game. And now talking about JVs and stuff, I think if you have the right genset operator, you have probably 80% of your headaches solved, because that's not only the biggest capex, but the biggest amount of operation headaches. Now, everybody who masters that operation, the rest is I will not say that it's easier, but it's going to be more bearable. And we're going to see that, Colin. I am pretty sure, and I am really, really bullish on Argentina in that regard. And yes, just as previously mentioned, small players, the guys that want to do things small and that are just like seizing the opportunity for doing a quick buck, are not going to last in that environment. Now, and this goes linked to the second part of your question. So if it is very difficult or very opaque to import not only the miners but also the containers, this prevents these companies that are doing fantastic things to get things growing, right? Because the asset is there. There's a ton of gas. There is a huge amount of fossil fuel resources that can be harnessing on site. And then the next part of the equation is, how do I get this done? Do I manufacture my containers here on site? Yes, I can do it. Do I manufacture all the electrical infrastructure? Yes, I can do it. Can I manufacture the gensets? Yes, I can do it. But they cannot manufacture their miners, right? So here's where partnering with companies that know how to walk the talk, it's important, so they can get reputable and trustworthy miners at a fair price, and that then they don't even get seized or flagged for importing machines on the wrong way or doing bad stuff. So, and I think the of course, this is an spectator opinion, right? There's we have a lot of good friends in Argentina, Luxor engineers, Luxor customers for sure, and as an spectator point of view, I can see that there are going to be more flexible opportunities to grow this business. Not extensions, but flexible opportunities to grow this business, because even the national oil company YPF is involved. So they are in the best of interest to get these inside or in-field consumers, right? Instead of paying all the unnecessary cost of transporting gas and oil to the actual point of sale.
Hey, this is Will with Blockspace Media, and I don't know if you heard, but we just announced the second edition of our conference series, Op Next, now to be held at the MicroStrategy HQ in Tysons, Virginia.
That's right. After the success of our first scaling conference at Fidelity last fall, we're doing it again this spring, April 11th and 12th at the MicroStrategy HQ. I'm really excited for the programming. We have various stakeholders, industry, developers, and Bitcoin miners present.
So join us in April for open, neutral, and honest conversation about the leading proposals and technical solutions that will scale Bitcoin to the next billion users. No booths, no tokens, no shills, just Bitcoin and honest conversation.
You can find tickets and more information at opnext.dev or click below in the show notes.
So the Argentinian National Oil Company is actively mining Bitcoin, or have as partnerships with Bitcoin miners. That's interesting. And so you're basically saying with Argentina, the majority of the mining that goes on there are in off-grid sites. So it's like smaller megawatt deployments. You're not going to get the same massive deployments, at least in the short term, that we see in Paraguay, because they're not really connecting directly to the grid, it sounds like.
Yeah. Okay. Of course, I would really like to see the other way, right? However, doing business or this type of business in places like Argentina, where you are not bothering anybody out there with noise, with all of the heat, or in Vaca Muerta they don't have that issue, right? There's in the middle of nowhere, but having these close to the cities or industrial parks with all of these miners doing huge amount of noise and producing a huge amount of heat, which of course can be mitigated through a number of technologies, right? However, I can't see a large number of deployments or growth in Argentina as the same as Paraguay due to the electrical infrastructure, the electrical power access.
Got it. And just a quick note on Malay. Has his presidency changed anything about the business environment for Bitcoin miners, or has it just always kind of been good for them or the same?
Oh my God. I don't think I have the right amount of facts to support that. One thing that I can tell you is that it's not decreasing, which I think it's good.
Makes sense. All right, Eric, last question. We focused a lot on the big three in Latin America, but you mentioned a number of other Bitcoin mining regions, including Ecuador, Costa Rica. What are some of the countries that you're really keeping an eye on? Or rather, since you've already kind of given us that, why do you think those regions will be good? And what are some of the special considerations for each of them with regards to Bitcoin mining? And which do you think might be, one of the more slept on regions that you think we'll see a lot of growth from in the coming years?
I was quite bullish on Ecuador probably 6 months ago. However, there has been certain amount of electricity or energy crisis in the country, which of course has prevented Bitcoin miners to use that energy, because now the country is really struggling on that regard. Peru is interesting. Peru has a large amount of nat gas. They are large exporters of nat gas. And not only that, but the jurisdiction over there is quite friendly with the data center technology industry kind of thing. So there are a couple of companies doing interesting things down there, both in the off-grid side and hydro side, which is arbitraging energy. So I see a good amount of momentum over there that it's going to take a little bit to get more mature. But I am really bullish on these companies that are doing good things the right way. I would really love to see Costa Rica growing more. Costa Rica has an amount of private hydro dams that they are not selling the power to, or they are not interested to sell the power to the grid due to a number of political issues, but they still have the power to sell the power to sell the energy to whoever they want. So they are looking for partners to go into this venture. They have the knowledge to generate electricity. Now they want somebody from the technology side to help them doing this on site. And there is another couple of places that unfortunately I cannot tell you, Colin, because you will steal all of my good ideas. But there are a couple of pretty interesting places in Latin America that have a huge amount of potential. With the right economics, things can work fantastically.
Oh, interesting. Seems like a lot of growth to come over the next halving epoch in the region. Really appreciate the insights, Erick. Before we hop off, where can people learn more about Luxor? Where can people find you? All that good stuff.
For sure. We are very active in Twitter or X. I don't know how it's called these days. Luxor at Luxor. That's the handle of the company. You can find me as the Erick Vera on my Twitter handle, or in LinkedIn, Erick Vera. It's you will find it as well. So there is a number of ways we can connect. There is a number of technology stack that you can harness of the Luxor team, such as firmware, such as derivatives, such as the mining pool and hardware. We can help you to achieve your goals. And if you are in the region, Latin America, and want to know more about these opportunities, or if you are a company that are looking to diversify your jurisdictional risk, please hit me. I will be more than happy to share thoughts. There are companies out there that are looking to grow heavily on the dozens of megawatt size, grid power, affordable power, and great opportunities. So more than happy to connect with your audience, Colin, and always, a pleasure to talk to you, buddy.
Always a pleasure, Erick. Hope you have a beautiful week, man.
Yeah, you too. Have a good one. I give my best to Charlie and Will.
Will do.